We'll cross our fingers and hope that this works. I always have. Oh, look at that. No problem. Oh. Oh. Spoke too soon. I don't believe in karma, but Nepal. What did I learn from Nepal? I was there for 3 weeks. I met with over 10 congregations personally, and the leaders from about 25 congregations. We went from north, south, east to west. I stepped up into China, which would be Tibet. I stepped down into India. I stepped in Bangladesh. And then I stayed away from the eastern part because I value my life, so I didn't step into that side. Nepal is a very, very poor place. In 2020, did we go in 2020 or 19? 2019, end of 2019. At the start of COVID, we went to Myanmar, which is in Thailand, and it is right next to Nepal. And it's just about the same level of poverty. But this place in 2015 was rocked by an earthquake. It was one of the worst earthquakes, definitely in the past century. And a man named Gage Coldwater, who runs the Manna Project, he is a preacher for the Church of Christ, and he runs his own nonprofit organization, which is for the Church of Christ to go and offer help, teach agriculture. They call it teaching farming God's way. And then after that, you teach how to live God's way. And so he went in 2015. He was one of the first Americans to hit boots on the ground after the earthquake. In fact, the day it happened, he got on a plane and he went. And he had a contact there that had worked in the government, and they got him 20 helicopters to fly up and down into the mountains of Tippling and Dotting Bessie and up close to where we know Mount Everest is. People know the name Everest. There are so many other mountains with people living there and people who are very poor. So he spent his time, his weeks there, flying food and shelter and bringing the injured down the mountain. And the people of Nepal appreciated that. He helped establish some 3 congregations while he was there. And since then, one of the congregations in a place called Kathmandu has established 10 other congregations, which we visited. And so there is a sprout in Nepal, just a little sprout of the church that is growing up, and it is growing quickly, but it is very poor, and they have a need. And their need is spiritual education, first and foremost. I want to say this before I start going through my slides. I spent 3 weeks there. I went to the poorest places. I went in the jungle where they have nothing. And I was never once asked for money by the Church of Christ, ever. No member of the church, they still have not asked me for money. When I would show up to a place that was impoverished, they had nothing, they would say, "We need to meet with you and talk." And so the 3 of us would sit down and meet, and they would say, "What does the Bible say about?" And then they would ask us that. And we're over here thinking, we're the money guys, you know. We show up, and most of the time people think, "Oh, Americans, give us some money, please." But they didn't care. They didn't care about money. They wanted to know what the Word of God had to say. And I have yet to be asked for money by the whole church in Nepal. The whole entire church that is in Nepal has not asked me for money, and I've seen all of them. It's just something to think about. So, I have a little video here that I'd like to play. I don't know if there's going to be, let's see, yep, there's not going to be anything, but I'm going to show you kind of what Nepal looks like, and I'll talk you through it. We got on a plane. There's Mount Everest. We flew into Nepal. This is Kathmandu, the city that we flew into. That's the international city. There's Gage Coldwater. There's our translator. There's him sleeping because it's exhausting. And here are the mountains. This is the general view. This is what you would see when you are traveling through Nepal. Now, again, I need to say Nepal is very poor, but it's probably the most beautiful place I've ever been to the world over. And our goal in meeting with these people was to see their agriculture and help them become self-sufficient with the church there. So we are not there to establish a lifeline. Let's give you money all the time so that you can rely on Americans. It is to teach them to do it for themselves so that they can live within their means and help other people. Ephesians 4 talks about labor with your hands the thing which is good so that you might have to give to those who are in need. Here we're giving demonstrations. We'll look at some of that. We are checking their goats. We are teaching in their church. And we are trying to help them become self-sufficient both physically and spiritually. This was Dotting Bessie. This is up close to Tippling. This was we got about 12,000 feet up. We worshiped with them on Sunday. They sit on the floor. They don't even have chairs, but they are happy and healthy. Here's a wild elephant. Just have to throw that in there every once in a while. There's how we transport goats. You drive them on a motorcycle. Why not? There was a man who had a brain tumor. We flew him to America and got it cut out. And he was so happy that we were there. These places, again, when you see them, it looks like a pretty place. They don't have toilets. Running water is not as easy to come by. They definitely don't have irrigation for their crops. But we have to help them. And we have to help them first spiritually, and then, or first physically and then spiritually. We traveled 10 hours to baptize these Christians here. It was a wonderful day. That was your whole day. Wake up, we're going across Nepal from east to west to baptize some people who have a desire. That's the Manna Project. So that's just a look, an overview of kind of what the country looks like. It's about the size of Arkansas, so we could travel across it pretty well. Let me go to this next one here. What were our goals for this mission? The first one was to check in with the past works. Since Gage had been there in the past, we wanted to go see how it was going and find the needs. Now, my goal within this goal is I have a desire to bring the teens back there and work hard. I want to work them like dogs so that they want to be ministers. I want them to get a feel for what the difficult parts of ministry can be, and also make a decision on their own that it's the sort of thing they want to be a part of. I want them to see the Lord's work in action. When Jesus would preach to people, he would give them some physical food, some water. He would heal them physically, and then he would offer them something spiritual. And the two things coupled together really are a very powerful evangelism. So that's what I would like for us to do. So my goal in being there was to see where we could come back and have a great impact. And we found so much. So to check in with the past works, to establish the church in Nepal, Paul would write in Titus 1:5 to set in order the things that are lacking. There's one church in Nepal that has elders, just one, and that is a serious problem. They are a nation of churches that expects the preacher to do all the work. Have you ever heard of such a thing? The preacher, he's not supposed to do hardly anything. That's what they expect in Nepal. So much so that they don't even appoint the elders because, The preacher's doing all of it. He's the guy in charge. So we were there to teach. And you'll see we taught everywhere we went. We would spend days teaching them and preaching to them. And then the last one was to find a work to return to and make a serious positive impact. And there are many needs. This was our group. We see Josh Robinson. Some of you know him. Gage Coldwater. Those two on the left. And then there's that ugly guy on the right. And then our translator, his name was Pramod Dakal. He was with us the entire time. If I was going to compare him to somebody, he would be Barnabas. He stuck with us the whole time. He worked hard. He translated for us. He was an encourager. He is the man. And he preaches at the church in Kathmandu, the capital city there. Here's Kathmandu as we were flying over it. It is very big. It is their capital. It's one of the most densely populated cities in the entire world. If you look that up on Google, you'll see all these densely populated, and then Kathmandu. Per capita, there are tons of people, which was devastating when the earthquake came through. And then it is our potential foothold into Nepal for mission work. When you fly into Nepal, this is where you go. And this is where the church started in Nepal. It's at their international airport. It's by the international airport. It's where everybody sort of congregates in the center of that city. And it is a great opportunity for the church to be established strong there and then to work out from there. This is it from the top. It is just a hodgepodge of poorly built structures. And it gave me a little bit of anxiety walking by some of them. I would see how they were built, and I would say, don't push on it, it'll fall down. And they thought that was so funny. Oh, Americans. This is the ugliest dog in the world. I found it. I claim it. We called him Dogmandu. So we were in Kathmandu. There's the ugliest dog the world over. This was the church there. They meet in a guest room in a person's house, in the preacher there. They have outgrown this room. So they don't have enough space to worship there, and that is all they have. They could worship outside, but it is a Hindu-controlled place, so it is not acceptable to worship in the street. So they need a bigger place. There was a need that I saw immediately. This was another congregation there in Kathmandu. Again, very small. We pack in the rooms. There is a hallway on the outside of this room to the right, and there were about 30 people crammed in this hallway listening, and they put the older members there on the floor because, again, they had a set of chairs up on the right-hand side there, and that's what they have. That's what they have there. I want to tell you about this man, the man in the middle. His name is Sercha Tamang. I wrote down a few things that he said, and we took a full interview with him. It's about 20 minutes long. This man was one of the first Christians ever to be baptized in Nepal. I think he was the second Christian in Nepal. And he lived in Tipling, which is where the earthquakes rocked up in the mountains, way up high in the mountains. When he was there, before he was a Christian, they studied shamanism. So that's the practices that they followed. And shamanism is a very dark culture. They sacrifice animals to an evil spirit when there are sicknesses. So if you get sick, they believe the evil spirit is there. So they start killing livestock and spraying the blood and dancing around you. And in a lot of cases, if they cannot cure that with their expert medicine that they have, then you are infected by the evil spirit, and then you have to watch out for your life. It's a very scary way of life, and this is up in the largest mountain range in the world. So he said, I need to find something to combat this evil. He was one of the elders of Tipling. So he heard of a man that knew about Jesus. An amazing story. And he travels to Kathmandu. It's many days through the mountains, and then you get on a jeep and you travel into the capital city. And he was with the man all the way to the right or your left. His name's Ramananda, and he taught him about Jesus Christ. And they spent a couple days studying and poring over God's word. He gave him stacks of material to read, and he said, I do believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He was baptized, and he went back to his home in Tippling, and he taught the whole tribe there, which is about 320 people, and they were all baptized, all of them. They all rejected shamanism, and they were all baptized. Now, there are 5 tribes up in that mountain range, and 2 of them didn't like that. So they came with machetes in the night, and they burned down their church building, and they came into their homes, and they tried to kill all of them. So they fled up into the mountains, and this is true. This is a wild story. They fled up into the mountains, and they survived on mushrooms for a couple days before Surcha went to Kathmandu to beg to Parliament to help them. And they said, no, we don't have the resource to help you. So he trudged back to Tippling, days and days and days, and he went to the shaman's temple. And there were 25 people there in the temple, the people that tried to kill him. And he said, so I stood in the midst of the 25 people that tried to kill me and said, I'll stand here for 5 minutes. If you want to kill me, then do so. But if you kill me, then my blood and my muscles and my sinew will grow up and make new Christians everywhere. That's amazing. And so he stood there, they didn't kill him, and he went on his way. This is an amazing man. They live in poverty. You know, he didn't ask me for money while I was there. Did I mention that? He wanted to know about some denominational doctrine that he had heard. Do you have any information on this? It's starting to come to Nepal. When Gage went there in 2015, when he got off the helicopter, Surcha was there with the elders of the church. Again, earthquake just happened, and he said, I need you to come with me. They sat him down in a room and said, fill out this questionnaire. How are you saved? How is the church established? What is the church? All these things. What's the qualification of an elder, of a deacon? And if he answered it right, after he answered it, he said, okay, you can help us. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Now you can help us if you know your Bible. They don't want false teaching getting in all the way up in the mountain. He's an amazing individual. He helped me while I was there. And they still have needs. So in Kathmandu, there are a couple needs that I saw. First, this plot of land right there, they are working at getting. Again, they did not ask for any help, but I said, what do we need for this plot of land? This is right next to the international airport. It is more centralized. They need a church building. So they have sold some of their homes and their lands, and they're living together, and they've raised $100,000 US, which is a lot. And they need $25,000 before a certain deadline. So we're going to look for that. Again, not asked for, but we're going to try to find it. So one of the things they need is church education. They need seminars on building a plan for the congregation. We are blessed here. When I came home and I look at our education system here in this church, it is amazing. It is amazing. We have things set up, people learning, people growing in Christ. That does not happen there. It's just sort of meet, study the Bible, go on your way. And they want to grow seriously. So they need a curriculum. So we brought that with us. We brought that and we taught them how to teach while we were there. They need agricultural training. We call it Farming God's Way. This is a great tool for evangelism. So they can make enough money to be self-sustainable if they produce enough. Crops are 90% of income over there. And most of what people spend, about 90% of what they spend is on food and just the things that they need daily. So This could be a help. So we offered them agricultural training. That's what the Manna Project does. They need a more central location. The church has expanded. So they need $25,000. There is a deadline. And then they need translated biblical materials from English to Nepali. You'd be surprised. Nepal has kind of been forgotten when it comes to translation. So me and Chris Waite are on it. That's right, Chris, I got back in day one. He said, oh, what is that? Well, I know somebody. We're on it. We're moving. So the church can help each other. But again, what we don't want to do is throw a monthly salary at a lot of these problems. We don't want to say, well, they need money. Let's just give them money. Because what tends to happen is you then rely on, there's a check coming in the mail every month from the Americans. So instead, we need them to grow their own crops. They need to have their own, they sell a lot of goats, a lot of rabbits, a lot of buff, which are like small buffaloes and cows and chickens. They need to know how to cultivate these things on their own so they can be self-sufficient. If we come and do all of it for them, the church will not grow. Next, we traveled to Joppa. Here we see us preaching. Gage is there preaching in Joppa. We traveled about a day's journey to Joppa. This is their massive airport on on your left that you can see there. Humongous. They have a tin roof and some leaves. That was their airport. And then we went up into the mountains of Joppa. As you could see us looking down, we had this area to work with the church. They have a very poor backyard, but they've got a place for goats. They have a place to grow some crops. You see, they've done a raised garden, but everything behind that we can use as an agricultural demo for them to learn how to be self-sufficient. And then you could see a structure that we started there, the cement and the rebar poking up. And they need, well, I'll get to that in just a moment. So we surveyed the land. A lot of what we did was going around and saying, this is what we can do. Here's the plan that we have moving forward. Let's get something together. And again, these people are hard workers, but they do what their parents have done. They learn how their parents have done it, and they stick with it. There's a way to grow rice that is so efficient that you can have more rice than you know what to do with. So we showed them how to do it. It's very simple. And they said, oh, I don't know. We've never done it this way. It's just hard to make changes in your life when you have done it this way for generations. But it's not working for them, so they need help. We gave them biblical materials. We taught them. We spent about a day and a half teaching them God's plan for salvation, how to teach that. We have a 12-month curriculum that we go over. Here's what the church is. Here's, I'll try not to get bogged down. It is a lot of information, and they needed it. So we give them the information, and then Pramod, who was our translator, is translating these documents into Nepali from English for us. These here, as seen in this picture, are the leaders from the congregations around Joppa. So we have some goals for Joppa. The first one is agricultural. We have to set up an agricultural demo garden at this DeKalb property duplex that you saw there so that the church can become self-sufficient. They need evangelism training, a plan with goals to grow their church family. The question was asked every single one of these places that we went to, who is going to be an elder here? And nobody would say anything. Who should we start training to become an elder? Nobody would say anything. And then occasionally, like an older person would raise their hand. And we would point to the young people. Have you considered being an elder? Are you married? Have you considered starting the training to become an elder? And it would turn a light bulb on in their head. Oh, these are things we have to plan for in the future. We have to start getting ready to become an elder. We have to live a life that is becoming of an elder and a deacon and someone who can help in the church. And so the church is coming together. These third world Christians are coming together and learning how to make a plan and to grow the church, both physically and spiritually. we had to set in order the things that are lacking. We have to find elders for the congregations. And again, I cannot stress enough how blessed we are. When I came back and I set my feet in America, I was so happy. Because this place really is blessed. Because we have a mind to work. We get out there, we plan ahead of time, and we grow. The church here in America is wonderful, so much so that we can go to other places and help them grow as well. We have great leadership. And then we went to the Suntal community. This is the Mangleberry community. Gage was calling it something else the whole trip, and we laughed every time he would say it, but it's Mangleberry. And these were the poorest people that we had seen. 50 years ago, the people from the mountains came down and gave them alcohol and got them all drunk and took all their land. So they have basically nothing. So their land is government-controlled land that has been annexed for them to control it, but they don't actually own any of this land. So they can become self-sufficient and start to get their own land. We went through, these are their structures, their sticks and leaves and some plaster that's falling apart, but they really don't have much. They had this old dilapidated building by a pond, so we spent about a day teaching them how to stock the pond so that they could sell fish and then start a garden outside of this dilapidated building, and then how to fix the roof and the siding to make it actually strong so that it has some integrity. But we wanted to keep it simple and give them a small goal with this area. So we had some goals for them. The first one, they needed a new building for them both to worship in and use as a school to learn how to read and write. They are Christians, but they cannot grow as Christians if they can't study God's Word. And again, they can't just listen to the Bible because there isn't an audible version of the Bible in Nepali. So they needed someone to teach them. So the Manna Project is going to hire someone for $200 a month as their worker to teach them. And over time, once they can learn how to read and write, then they can teach their children to read and write, and they can start a school, and it can grow from there. But these are simple things that, we take for granted, and we wouldn't think about a lot of times. But yes, you have to know how to read and write if you want to grow as a Christian. If you want the church to grow, you need literacy. So that was one thing we said, yes, we can hire someone to do this. And their average salary is about $200 a month U.S. And then we need help with dentistry. The people from this village, this was said to me by them, not by me. The people from this village have as much medical care as they have teeth. And they don't have many teeth. So they need some help with their dentistry. So if only we had someone who was a dentist who would want to go over and help them. So we found a work that we could go to Mangleberry. This is close to Joppa, by the way. It's a very poor place. I spoke with the member of parliament who was over Joppa, and he was a very nice man. And I said, we'd like to help these people do a medical mission with the Church of Christ through the Manna Project for dentistry for the Mangleberry group. And he said, wow, we were just talking about that. They need it. They need it bad. But they don't have the resources to divide. They don't have many dentists in the country, so they need help. So this would be, again, you offer them something physical and you preach to them immediately following. And the people are very receptive. But it is okay to offer non-Christians physical blessings. I think people forget that sometimes. Jesus did it everywhere. That's how he started. He would say, here's some food. Now let me tell you about the food, the bread of life. We might say, we're going to clean your mouth and then maybe clean your heart. Something like that. But dentistry is a definite need there. I had a picture, or I had a video of me explaining, and I'll send it out. I'll get it out on the web somehow and to the people here. But I'm doing an interview with the leader of Mangleberry and saying they need dentistry. And he smiles and goes, "Hee," and points at his one tooth. And Gage said, "Don't laugh, don't you laugh." And I'm sitting over there trying to do this. And they were relentless. And then we need to connect them with Joppa to use them as a resource for biblical teaching. I have to move on here. Again, it's very hard to condense 3 weeks into this one. And there are so many pictures and videos I want to show you, but I'm just going to give you the bare bones. This was Pokhara, Nepal. This is where tourists would go. It's very beautiful. It's a wonderful place to stay. Here's that picture. This is where we stayed. I would wake up to this in the morning, and that's where I would eat. I stayed in this nice little castle, and it looks beautiful. Still no toilet, but it was wonderful. That's the sunrise over Pokhara, first thing in the morning. And we trekked through the mountains. We had to hike about a day. So if you think that being a healthy Christian doesn't amount to anything, if you want to do some real work, try trekking through the Himalayan mountains all day and see what comes of it. And we went all the way across this mountain range to meet with the church there. So it's a wonderful, wonderful place. The Christians are wonderful. Here we have us preaching and doing an interview with Christians. The church in Pokhara is largely made up of blind Christians. And they do not want our money. But what they do have is they have speakers. So all the blind brethren of the church take their speakers out and they sing on the side of the road and they make money singing. And then they bring that money to the church and they divvy it up and they buy food and things like that. They wanted to buy some Braille Bibles in Nepali. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about their health. We're talking about how can we help you become more self-sufficient. And they are amazing, amazing Christians because they want to be self-sufficient more than anyone else I've seen. And they don't accept help easily. They want to do it, and they want to be responsible, even though they're blind. So the needs here, they need Bibles in Braille. There's a need we found in Pokhara. They need simple playback recorders. They were trying to use the phone, but when you hit the wrong button, you're gone at that point. So then they would turn it off, try it again. So they need simple push, start, stop recorders. They need medical assistance for cataracts and other problems that stem from their poor lifestyle and dirty living. A lot of their blindness can be reversed and can be prevented. And then there's some potential. The community of disabled people here are extremely receptive to the gospel and appreciate having others to whom they can relate. There are a lot of disabled people in Pokhara, and when they hear preaching from other disabled people, they cling to it immediately. It's amazing to see. So we brought people who were not Christians to that church so that they could hear, and then they were there. That's where they are now. That's their home. And then this is our launch point to Western Nepal. There is not a church in Western Nepal past this point. But a lot of people in Western Nepal are very ill and disabled. There's something going on there. That's Pokhara. Then we went to Chitwan. This is southern Nepal. There you see we are passing Everest on our way to southern Nepal. We went over these mountains and into the jungle. And this was a very poor place. Our translator was having coffee with me, and I had all these bugs in my coffee. And I said, "Why are there so many bugs in my coffee?" And you have to drink it because they worked hard on that coffee. And he said, "It's the jungle." And that was it. Oh, okay. Oh, it's the jungle. All right. Well, let me drink these bugs. So we were in the jungle. We met, again, these are the leaders of the congregations all around Chitwan, and we're offering them curriculum, a plan to grow. We're asking them about elders, setting in order the things that are lacking. We're preaching to them about the gospel and how to share that with the people around them, and we spent days doing that. We also spent some time with some elephants. We had to travel by elephant at one point. There is the top of Gage's head, and there's a wild elephant on the other side of that bush. And I said, "If he picks you up, he's going to kill you." And he said, "Yeah, but it's so cool." So we chanced it, and we're still alive. But It was fun. There's me riding the elephant. That was fun. It was hot. Now, this is really what I want to talk to you about, and I'm going as quick as I can. This is the Similtar village. Now, again, my goal is to find a work that we can grab onto and really put some effort into. I have a short clip here. I don't think there's any, they had me laughing the whole time. I don't think there's any audio here, unfortunately, but I'm talking to you about this village and some of the things that we did while we were there. We helped them with their agriculture. We were doing seminars in the morning, and then here's their church building. We would meet in their church, and we would study God's Word. And then we would go out, and we would do other agricultural things. I worked with their goats. That was fun. They had some problems with their goats that, a lot of people might not be interested in. But if we can help them, there's Gage looking at a goat, doing something. If we can help them in any way, we want to. And they want our help. They want to know how to be self-sufficient Christians, and they want to grow. This community has a couple hundred people in it, and 40 of them are Christians, and they're very open to the gospel. So we will show them how to farm God's way in the morning, and then at nighttime we will preach to them how to live God's way. There is no electricity. There's a river with no parasites in it. It's clean. It's a subtropic river from the mountains, so it springs out clean. And we will stay in tents, and we will work at this village. We're going to teach them how, and then we will teach them God's way at nighttime. So we're going to preach the gospel to them. I hope the young people are ready to preach the gospel and to do work. Some of the things that here's some pictures. There's their agriculture up in the mountains, in the jungle. It's a very safe place. Here's some goals that I had. We need water for goats outside of their feed run. I know that seems like something that we would know about, but they didn't know about it. They don't give their goats water. They need moringa plants. Moringa is a superfood. It's a tree. We need to show them how to plant it, how to grow it, and how to cultivate it. And then they'd be rich by Nepali standards. They need new goats with proper body scoring. Their current livestock is gaunt and deformed. They have some deformity that they cannot breed into other goats. So we have to teach them about proper body scoring so that they can be, again, self-sufficient. They need stronger corn. They have problems with soil and armyworms. The moringa would solve that problem. They need a manure farm. This all sounds very important, doesn't it? They need to know how to turn manure every day. But again, they need someone to teach them. They need to learn farming God's way. And then we need to build what's called the hydro ram pump for irrigation. This is a pump that uses gravity. So you start up the mountain in the jungle at the head of the river, and you create this large pump that goes down in a tube. The water comes down and it hits a pump and causes a spike and shoots out, and it irrigates their crops and it gives them clean water. So we need to build the pump here. We need to test it out, and then we need to pack it up and send it over there and dig through the jungle and set this up and show them how to irrigate their farms. That's hard work. We got a lot of hard work ahead of us, but they need that. And then every day we need to teach them the gospel. After we work, we need to work. So that's our goals for this village. I want to take the kids here. There's their little goat run. No food on the outside, no water, no nothing. There's their manure farm. Sticks and leaves, and it's not good. They're sitting on it. Here's our simple demonstration. You don't just leave your corn out in the heat. You have to cover it up with a little hay, let it grow, let it hold moisture. Simple things, but they've never done it this way. So we have a lot that we can teach them, both physically and spiritually. Again, they never ask for money. They want to know how to do it themselves. They have amazing attitudes. And then what else we did, there's so much more, but I want to end. We preached to some denominational churches. They wanted us to come preach. And we preached hard for hours, 6, 7 hours. And it was difficult. because they would reject it a lot of times. But I wanted to thank, I don't see BJ here. It was 3 p.m. and I said, BJ, I need some information on this. And that means it was 3 a.m. here. And BJ went, bloop, here's a whole bunch of information at 3 a.m. and helped me out. That's the sort of resource we have here in America. It is amazing to be here at this church. And I appreciate you guys so much. And then what we accomplished while we were there, I'm not going to go over all the baptisms we had, but it is a fertile ground for Christians. It is such a great place. The people are open to the concept. They don't like the state religion because it is evil and it's wicked and it's depressing. The end of their religion is death and sadness. But the end of Christianity is hope and joy, and that's what they want. They want freedom, spiritual freedom. They want that living water and that bread that you never hunger after you eat it. And they take hold of these concepts very readily, and they are baptized. And the church here was so wonderful. So, in closing, what did I learn about the church in Nepal? First, the people had a mind to work. Nehemiah said in Nehemiah 4:6, the people have a mind to work. They had to get back, and the reason why Nehemiah was such a great leader is because the people around him wanted to work. The preacher sometimes in Nepal was given all the responsibility. But as soon as we said, no, that's not how it should be, look at God's word, look at how the people worked, they would look at it and say, okay, what do we have to do? And they'd get to it immediately. And fruits would happen immediately. It was so great. Second thing is, it doesn't take a prophet to do the work. Amos said, Amos 7:14, I'm not a prophet, nor am I the son of a prophet. He wasn't a preacher, and his daddy wasn't a preacher, but he got to work. The God of heaven told Amos to preach. So he preached, and he got to it. I'm a minister here, and Scott is a minister. But that doesn't mean that every one of you can't get to work doing something that will have a greater impact than I'd ever make. You are all ministers. You've all been given the responsibility to get to work. And these people here taught me that. Just because they were stuck in a rut, letting their preacher do everything, and I'm not saying you do that. I am blessed here with a hardworking congregation, but they had to learn it, and they jumped to, and it really had a great impact. But it doesn't take a prophet. There are a few other people in Scripture that learned this. Jonah ran from his responsibility, Jonah 1:3. He said, I don't want to preach to those people. And God said, I don't care. You're going to preach to those people. Moses said, I'm not good enough at preaching. I'm not good enough at speaking. I'm not eloquent in speech. And God said, I don't care. Get to it. Jeremiah was told, they won't listen to you. You're going to preach for 40 years. They're not going to listen. God said, I don't care. Do it anyways. Peter was told by the people to whom he was preaching in Acts 2, 7, and 13, are these people drunk? They're just Galileans. They're nobody special. And what did Peter do anyways? He didn't care. He kept preaching. And because of it, you see the church grow. Paul said, Acts 26, 9 through 11, I'm chief of sinners. Paul said, I murdered Christians. I killed people. And God said to Paul, it's time to start preaching. Timothy was told, don't let them despise your youth, but be an example to the believers. It doesn't matter how old or how young you are. It doesn't matter if your dad's a preacher. It doesn't matter if you have a wicked past, if you don't like the people to whom you're preaching. All of these things don't matter. We all have the ability and the responsibility to get to work. And then God has given us the whole world. And I want to end with this, Matthew 28, 18 through 20. Jesus told his disciples to go and make disciples. We met a man from America while we were there. His name, well, I won't tell you his name. But he studied at Harding. You guys know where Harding is. And he moved to China as a missionary, and he preached for, well, I don't know if he preached. He was there for 9 years as a missionary. He did not make one disciple. And then he moved to Nepal a year and a half ago, and he worships with his family and one other American. And he told me, when we were in China, I fell on my knees with fasting and prayer for 40 days, and I prayed that God would open up doors for me to preach and make disciples. And in a decade, he still hasn't done anything. He hasn't made one disciple. So we went there, and in 1 week, we made a lot of disciples. God gave the increase because God has given us the whole world as our Great Commission. We have already been created. We've already been given all things. He has already sacrificed his life for us. He has already given us the gospel. It was once for all delivered. And he's given us a great commission and said, go and preach. I don't need God to come to me in a small, still voice and say, go to Nepal. Because he already did. He already said, if you have the opportunity to go somewhere in the world and preach, go and preach. Get to work. Start it now. You don't need anything else. What you have is a great commission. So, when I'm looking at this, I was told by, I'm going to call you out, I'm sorry, Melissa Brown, that she did mission trips when she was younger, when she was a teenager. And they would go places, and it had a great effect on her. And I can remember that. So I want these young men and young women to have this experience. I want them to go and to preach. I want them to go and have a ministry that they can put their hands on. And I want them to make disciples as well. And I believe that if we do that, our young people will stay with the church. They will grow, and they will have a faith that is stronger than we have seen in a long time. This afternoon, I know that you heard a lot about a foreign country. A lot of work is being done. We've been given a great commission. But you have the opportunity to be added to the church now. God has given us all that we need. He has sacrificed his life for us. We love our Jesus. I want to be like the man Sercha who was threatened, and he said, you cannot take Jesus from me. You can kill me if you want, but more Christians will grow up in my place. And I want that kind of faith. And if you want to be baptized today, you can be added to the church. Paul writes that in Galatians chapter 3, 26 and 27. We're baptized into Christ. We are added to the church. Paul writes about that again in Romans 6. You're buried by baptism into his death, and then you're raised to walk in newness of life. If you would like to be added to the church of Christ, you can do so now. If you feel that your Christianity has not been what it should, you have been slack, maybe don't come forward, but come talk to me. Come talk to me and say, I want to get to work, because there is so much available. There is a full mission field and more work than we can accomplish. This is just the tip of the iceberg that I shared with you. But if you've sinned publicly and you need to make that known, you can also do that, and we will pray for you, and we will wrap our arms around you. Whatever your need may be, please come as together we stand and sing.